Thank you very much. I'm very glad that my talk is after the coffee break, because now you should be refreshed. I have heard about a company who is actually measuring the number of coffee cups that are consumed. I don't know how many rules of Lee this is actually breaking, but at least it's fun. So today I would like to talk about agile testers and what does it mean to be agile tester. And just a short introduction about myself. So I born as a developer, so you should be maybe surprised that's why I'm here. And I very well know what is the difference and what is how developers are seeing the testers and how this feels. And after many years of developing, making architecture and things like that, I've realized that development without good testing worth nothing. So I just started to deal with testing, and now I can say very proudly that I really love testing. And I'm really proud that I can also tell some learnings I had in this topic. So, agile testing and agile testers. So, are you an agile tester? So raise your hand if you feel like you are an agile tester. A few of you. That's great. How many of you have read the Agile Testing, the book of Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin? Few of you. That's great. That's great. I also have a friend, you know, one always have a friend who is having problems. So I also have a friend who says that he's an agile tester, and I was trying to ask him, what does it feel, how is it like to be an agile tester? And he said that, well, actually we have a couple of principles, couple of important things that we are valuing, and he started to list them, and it's like was collaboration, communication, transparency, being part of the specification and things like that. And it sounded like strange because, first of all, of course, these principles sounding very good and they are probably very valuable, but you know, if I see an abstract list of points which consists more than 3 items, that I already have an alarm in my head that, okay, so whether you had the focus or not. So I was trying to ask him how does it feel, so how does he working? How does he, for example, participate in the requirement gathering, and how is a sprint looks like? And actually he said that, well, I have a lot of time to work on tests and requirements, because on the first day of the sprint where we're supposed to start working together, the developers usually come to me and say that, we have anyway discussed all the details, so you can just write your test, we are writing our code, and once we are done, you can do the testing and we can verify whether we really understood it well. And I said that, okay, and does it work? Yeah, actually, he said that it worked, but the problem is that they are usually finishing a story in a few days, but once I approached them to that we should do the testing together, they said that, well, we are already doing the next implementation, and okay, and then when do you do the testing at the end? So he said that, well, usually on the last day of the sprints, you know, this Friday where we are preparing for the demo, they say that now we are ready, so you can start testing. Okay, so you had a 2-week sprint and you had 1 day for testing. Does that work? No, of course not. So on that day we are already preparing for the demo, so I'm usually testing their stuff on the next sprint. And what they are doing? They are already implementing the new stories. That's very strange. And I was asking that, okay, so this means that you are writing your tests basically alone and trying to verify the process after that. How does this test look like? And he said that, we are agile, so we learned that our test should be somehow business readable. So we have heard a wonderful technique called behavior-driven development, and there is a wonderful tool called Cucumber. So we started to use that, and we are writing all of our tests in a given and then readable English sentences. Okay, show me an example. This is an example. So this is your test. And is the product owner really interested about reading these tests? No, of course not. Why he would be? This is only a test. I understand. So you said that the sprint planning is then the day when you are basically discuss about the things. This is when you communicate or collaborate with each other. How does a sprint planning look like for you? And he said that, well, like every sprint planning, that the product owner stands out, explains us what the requirements are, and we try to make notes. And, okay, then what is the change? Actually, the change is now I'm also invited to this meeting. Aha, that's very good. You are invited to this meeting, and what are you doing there? Well, actually more or less like the others, so trying not to fall asleep. Agile testing is somehow promising that it helps you to change the roles of Agile testers to be an equal part of the team. So I was asking that, okay, at least that you feel that you are equal part of the team. And he said, absolutely, this works, because we are equally unhappy of how we are doing the things. Okay, so I told him that, well, I have a bad and a good news for you. And the bad news is that you are not an Agile tester. You are probably a tester in an Agile team, if the team is Agile at all, but you are not really got the point of what you have to do. But the good news is that there is a way to change. But for this way, you have to also change your behavior. You have to get back the control. You have to get back the value. You have to be proud of yourself being a tester to be a good Agile tester. So you need some kind of revolution. It will not work in a way that you are just following some principles, following some rules that Agile testing books are telling you. You have to change yourself as well. And this sounds hard on one hand, but this will be also very easy, and you will be very proud of that if you really make this step. All the principles that we have seen about Agile testing are very good, but if you want to condense this all to some kind of one single message, at least how I believe Agile testing is about changing the behavior, changing the role of testing from being someone who is like a policeman who is hunting the bugs and trying to find them, to someone who is trying to prevent the bugs and to prevent that there is any bug in the system. So if you have a measurement of how many bugs the testers are finding, and if it's finally 0, this can be a very good result, because this means that you were able to prevent the bugs. Okay, but if you want to prevent the bugs, what can you do? Of course, you cannot test the application, because the application doesn't exist yet, right? So what can you test? Because testers are testing. The only thing that you can test at this stage is the requirements, is the concepts that we will implement at the end as an application. And that's why many sources, many books that are talking about Agile testing, they are talking about what is the relation between requirements and tests. And understanding this relation is one of the key parts for being really an Agile tester. So for example, Robert C. Martin, alias Uncle Bob, and Gregory Melnick, who actually did his PhD about Agile testing, was making a sentence where they were using this metaphor of Möbius strip between the tests and the requirements. So they are sounding like the two sides of the coin, but it's even more. So actually it's the same. And they are saying that a very strong statement that tests and requirements are equivalent in some sense. Also, if you read books of Gojko Edžić, who is also very important author in this topic, he's explaining the relation of examples, tests, and requirements in a way that we all know that tests consist of examples. This is how we can run them. And we also know that tests are used to verify the requirements. But examples are also very good to explain, to make understandable the requirements for us. Okay, this is a very strange relation between these things. Sometimes these are, to understand and think about these relations can be very good for moving on that. So, to give you a few concrete examples how, at least in our process, Agile testers are behaving, let me just quickly summarize how our process, how our development process is. There will be not too much surprise in that. So somehow we are working in user stories, so somehow you get the user stories. We usually use the wonderful technique of story mapping, not the topic of my talk, to get to user stories. But somehow, as a result, we have a product backlog like in every usual Agile project. From this project backlog, we are making, during the sprint planning, a sprint backlog, which will be also used for using as a source of the task board. So we are also making tasks to that. There is nothing really special in that so far. And once we have these requirements, once we have this sprint backlog, which is a little bit differently prepared than usually, we are trying to make some really business readable tests with this give and when then technique, or with this cucumber or spec flow. And our development is based on these tests, based on this executable specification, and this is what we use to develop our product. And at the end, what we also get as a continuous verification of not the application. The tests, normally if you write a test, that verifies the application, but that's not the point. You don't want to verify the application, you want to verify whether it fulfills the requirements. Okay, so if you are phrasing your tests with the words of the requirements, then your tests are not only verifying your application, but they are verifying your intentions, your requirements. So this is our process, and let's see with a few examples what the Agile tester can do in this process. Let's say that we haven't really started the process yet, so we are still in the preparation phase of the project. And at this point, Agile testers can help doing some kind of test strategy. How many of you or in your projects have a software design or software architecture concept in your project when you start a new project? Right? Almost everyone, right? So you start a project with defining what kind of layers, what kind of physical software, whatever architecture you will have. How many of you have a similar strategy for testing? Much less. So what we need to do, we have to find a way how we're going to address the quality of our system. And this way, this strategy will be different application by application, just like the software architecture is slightly different for application by application. And there is a concept called context-driven testing. Maybe you have heard about that. Context-driven testing school, or at least the idea says that in testing, there are no silver bullets, no really boxed solutions. Probably for testing of my website, of my local consultancy business, needs completely different strategy than testing a subway controlling system, right? Maybe in this one, we need a lot of whatever, automated tests, reports, whatever. For testing my website, maybe a small exploratory testing would be enough. So whenever we are designing or thinking about testing strategy, we have to adapt everything that we have learned to this concrete project and see what fits and what not. One example of that is, especially if you are doing test automation, this is a typical example that you have to decide in which layer you want to automate your application, whether you want to automate it through the UI with Selenium, or you want to just go some inner layer of your application and you are automating it on the controller layer. And of course, all of you are making this decision because sooner or later you have to make these automated tests. But the question is whether you are really thinking about this particular decision as a part of a big strategy. It doesn't work like that like in a heating system, that if I'm just turning down the heating system to be a little bit colder, then definitely I will pay less for the energy usage. But maybe I have to put on some pullover because otherwise I will get cold, right? And the same happens in our software. You can say that in our application, it's not so important to test everything through the UI, but then you have to figure out how you are compensating this lack of automated tests. So deciding on, for example, on the test automation target is not only a decision as itself, but it should be part of a bigger strategy. And if you are turning down your level of testing into some control layer, maybe you have to have more manual or exploratory testing for the UI. Okay, so everything has to be seen in a kind of holistic way. Many things can be done in the preparation phase. Also, feasibility checks whether the test strategy that you have decided is really fitting to the project and really achievable in your system. During the sprint planning, so this is the point where we can prevent the bugs in the majorly, and this is where the collaboration and the communication happens the most of the cases. I will not tell you how it exactly works, but I just to tell you an example how how sprint planning works in an agile project. How many of you have heard about user stories and acceptance criteria? Good, many people have heard about acceptance criteria. Usually, many people have heard about acceptance criteria, but usually not so many can write good acceptance criteria. I just tell you an example of a simple way how you can find good acceptance criteria, and you will immediately understand how it relates to agile testing. So let's imagine that we have a user story. It's from a bookshop. As a customer, I want to collect books, so collect books in a shopping cart so that I can order them at once. How can you make acceptance criteria for that? One good technique is that you are just closing your eyes and imagine that this is already implemented. What would be the first thing that you would check whether it's really there? Probably you would try to put a book into the shopping cart, right? This is most probably the first thing that comes to your mind. That's very good. We have the first acceptance criteria. Books can be added to the shopping cart. Then what would be the next thing that you would check? Maybe you would try to remove something from a shopping cart. OK, now we have another acceptance criteria. So now we were discussing about requirements, but actually we were using a testing mindset to figure out what we want to achieve. So like testing a concept or testing an idea without having implemented. And once we have the acceptance criteria, it's also very important to have examples for that so that people can better understand it. You can clear out misunderstandings and many other things. So for example, in a search use case or search-related acceptance criteria in a system, probably you have just listing a few books in your whiteboard and make some examples for the search. OK, if I have these books, then if I search for spec, then I should get back the specification by example book from Goiko Edgich. And if you have these examples, of course it helps to better understand the things, but it's also good for asking new questions. OK, so what happens if I search for this? What happens if I search for a single letter or for an empty string and many other things? This is the analytic mindset that the testers have and where they can really contribute on this project and break down the model and figure out whether there are any issues with that without writing a single line of code. Okay, this is a way of preventing bugs. And there are many other things that you can do in this sprint planning session, how an agile tester can really actively contribute to the session, not only just listening to what the product owner says. And of course, during the sprint planning, it's also a very important role. Of course, you can also do testing, exploratory testing, and direct testing related stuff. But also there are many other important things. So if you are, for example, following this behavior-driven development process, which is saying that you should really try to write your test in a way that it's business readable, then this is the time when you, for example, can write these tests in a really business readable format. So not like just click on a link, which doesn't mean anything from the business perspective, but trying to get the essence of the requirements, the functionality, in a way that it can be automated. And usually this is not something that the tester is doing alone. Usually they are doing it together with product owners or developers. This is the technique called three amigos. So these three roles can work together to have this specification. And what is also very important that based on that you can have some automated different pieces of that. So you not only have a fully functional automated test, but you are also having some building blocks that you can you can use to build up new tests out of that. So this is very important. The other interesting thing is about baseline data. And in the beginning, when I started to deal with BDD, we had a project where we said that, OK, we want to make all our automated tests very specific. So all of our tests started with a huge list that, given the following countries in the world, Hungary, Austria, blah, 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 given the following currencies in the world, euro, forints, whatever. And all of our tests was, I don't know, like 2 pages of preparation of some baseline data. And then after a few weeks, we started to see that, are we crazy? This is stupid. This is common sense. Why do we want to list them? And of course, sometimes it's really common sense. So it's common sense what kind of countries there are in the world, or at least the more important ones. But there are also some things which are maybe not so much of a common sense, but still very important that you don't have to repeat them and don't have to reinvent the wheel for every single test. So what kind of users, what kind of personas if you have in your system, if you also have a UX department, and they know very well about personas. And these are fitting very well to tests as well. So one of the roles of Agile tester is to have a good baseline data that you can build good tests on top of without too much effort. Of course, in our case, in this bookshop, probably the default books or some books that you can make your test on is important. It's also very important that the transparency means that you can visualize problems. So this is a picture from the Tech Talk office where I was working for a long time, and they had very complex system, very complex testing and development requirements. So they finally realized that making a small legal construct, they can very well visualize the problem, and everyone immediately understands where the different problems happen if they have such visualization in there. The other thing is like a feedback system. So us as Agile testers, it's very important to give feedback to the developers or whoever is implementing the system that they can learn about their mistakes alone. So I don't have to go there and punish them or whatever, just talk to them that, okay, you have made a mistake, but I'm rather giving them a tool which can turn red or somehow indicate that they have made a mistake. Okay? Giving transparency and giving good feedback, good consumable feedback is also very important. This is absolutely related to Agile testing. Of course, many other things can be done during the test. I will not go through all the topics. But actually, we are not done yet. So we just finished the sprint. Of course, the next sprint goes on, but it's also very important that we are not only there to do our job, but we are there to also teach others, share the experience, and keep the information and the knowledge moving on. This is also why I'm here now. Okay, so don't stop when the project ends, but try to take the time to give it forward. Okay, a revolution, a change of mindset. This is what you need there. And finally, with that, you can give back the words the real meaning. So collaboration is very important, but the important is collaborating on the product so that you are really giving feedback on the product. And communication is also very important, but it's not just listening, but also giving and taking. Transparency doesn't mean that you are producing hundreds of PDFs and putting it to the file share, but that you are making easily accessible things that are important or that are useful. And finally, we are agile, which means we are inspecting and adapting. No one will do it immediately right from the beginning, but you should just keep trying and improve yourself as you go. So thanks for listening, and I think I have time for maybe a few questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gaspar. I'm pretty sure you got some hints how to become heroes of this revolution Gaspar was talking about. One question only, because we are behind the...
It wasn't my mistake, I was just talking
one
late.
question, but you can ask from Gaspar in the break during the lunch as well. But if there is one question that you don't want to forget and you want to ask now, you can ask now. I see that...
This is if you are putting pressure on the audience, then they will never ask.
People will ask in the break sometimes.
Yeah, I will be around here, so just come to me and I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gaspar.